Hey Faithful, welcome back to the Saloon presented by Cisco. I'm your 49ers team reporter, Briana, Jeannel, and in today's episode, there's going to be a lot for you. We've got guests from across the country. We're recapping Week 8, looking ahead to Week 9 in New York. First up, I'm talking to Cam Inman from the Bay Area News Group to recap everything that went down in Houston against the Texans. All right, Faithful, joining me on the Saloon now is Cam Inman. He is a member of the Bay Area News Group, and he travels with the team to every game. He's inside and out, knows everything that's going on. Cam, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you.
All right, let's talk about what happened in Houston. Cam, from your perspective, what were some of the biggest takeaways from this Week 8 game?
You know, it's one of those, you don't want to blame it on the 10 a.m. start time because you can get sucked into that trap, and they've overcome it in the past. But that whole first half was so weird and sleepy where they only have the ball for 5 minutes. And the defense is obviously going to have growing pains this year, but they just couldn't get off the field. And so they come away with the loss. And, I mean, there were some spurts there where you think, all right, they're going to be able to rally. They're kind of staying close, and they just never could get around to do it. And obviously there's personnel issues because of injuries. The week before they overcame it and did really well against Atlanta with one of their best games of the year. And then they followed up this with the worst game of the year. And what I liked in the locker room was, and I talked to offensive and defensive players, but I really liked how the offensive veterans, stepped up and kind of put the blame on themselves, which is, the valiant thing to do. But it was both sides. The defense has to get off the field on third downs regardless. The offense has to try to stay on the field. And it was just kind of it's one of those games where you just go, okay, they just never were in it. And that's too bad. They have to figure out ways to get around it. And, the beauty of it is that's what happens in the NFL. So this team has not lost back-to-back games yet this season, and they have to get back in that mentality going into New York that it's a bounce-back game. That was their dud in Houston, and now they got a rebound.
Definitely. Was this game in Houston more about what the Texans did right or what the 49ers couldn't get going, or maybe a mixture of both?
I mean, you do need to credit the Texans for doing you knew that they were going to have a great pass rush with Will Anderson, and he did really well. What I don't think we were expecting was C.J. Stroud to be so efficient and being able to kind of take advantage of the middle of the field with his throws. And, that's the middle of the field is missing Fred Warner. It's obvious. I mean, anybody that knows football knows the Niners are going to miss Fred there. It was glaring how they just couldn't get a pass rush on him. And Robert Saleh's play calls, you tried to do some blitzing early. That wasn't working. He tried to get the four-man rush. That wasn't working. So I think the Niners know that they need to credit the Texans for understanding coming out with a smart game plan. And, they did get the interception off C.J. Stroud before halftime. It just, they weren't able to, flip it into points. And so, again, kind of your 15 games without an interception that's turned into points. And, any team needs to get takeaways and convert and get points on them. And the Niners aren't doing that still.
Yeah, even George Kittle acknowledged to C.J. Stroud after the game, like, hey, you were slicing and dicing over on offense. And you mentioned it earlier in the podcast that Kyle Shanahan even called the first half a very tough and unusual first half. What did you see as the biggest issue early on for this offense?
It's hard to say they couldn't get in a rhythm because they really didn't have a chance. It was just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. They only had the ball for 5.5 minutes. And there were penalties. There was protection issues. You can say Christian McCaffrey didn't run the ball. He didn't have many opportunities to run the ball, and that reflects everybody. Somebody was saying that, well, Mac Jones isn't mobile enough. Brock Purdy had been mobile. Well, Mac Jones, he had a nice scramble to midfield. The problem was there was a penalty that negated that scramble. So you can't have those lapses in a game where you don't have a lot of margin for victory. And it's margin for error, margin for victory. Regardless, the Niners did not play well offensively or defensively, and it showed up.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Mac Jones, he did have 2 touchdowns in this game, although it was sort of a slow start for the beginning of the contest. But how would you evaluate his performance overall and how he's been stepping up to the plate each week that he's been, under center?
Yeah, he's won 4 games as Brock Purdy's fill-in, and he's done it in a way where the team likes to rally around him. He's a fun guy, but he's also a very talented quarterback. Those touchdown passes to George Kittle and Jake Tongas were right on the money. Although the one to Jake was intended for Kittle, and Jake somehow caught this 110-mile-an-hour fastball as if he was throwing in the World Series. It was great. I've really enjoyed Mac, covering him for a couple months. And, the wild thing is, back in 2021, when they were debating what to do with the number 3 draft pick, I think I wrote a story about Mac Jones. I had no agenda against Mac Jones. I still don't. But there was such a groundswell of negativity. Nobody wanted them to draft Mac Jones. Kyle Shanahan may have wanted to, but there was this really strange just perception that, don't bring him in here, this Alabama quarterback. We want something different. We want, anything else. And now that you have him, it's just what a godsend he's been, because he's obviously knows how to run an NFL offense. He has his teammate support. He's very talented. It's been a great addition for them to have in place while Brock gets his toe healthy. So, it's what you want out of a backup quarterback. I don't think there's any quarterback controversy that people like to kind of inspire after any win. But at the same time, you need Brock to be fully healthy before he's back on that field.
Yeah, this is a total team effort, especially in that quarterback room. I think he's a great fit for this locker room. Now, looking a little bit at the defense, they did take several hits in this game. Jordan Elliott, D. Winters, Sam O. How much did those losses affect San Francisco's ability to, rush the passer and even stop the run against the Texans?
Yeah, and it's too fair. It's unfair to pin that on those injuries, because they were second half injuries for the most part, and the Texans were doing damage throughout the game. And as much as you want the next man up mentality, and that's what it has to be, it's almost like the next string up, because they've gone from first string to second string to almost third string now. And the concerning thing about that is we're only at the midway point of the season. Is everybody going to come back? No. So you need to find guys that rise to the occasion. And they did that against Atlanta. So it's not a lost cause, but there's going to be attrition every game. And you just hope it's nothing too serious. And they have to figure out a way to rush the passer. There's going to be another young quarterback that's going against them this week in New York, and Jaxson Dart, who can run the ball. He has one more rushing touchdown than Christian McCaffrey, so that's concerning. But they'll figure it out. I mean, it's the fact that he brought Robert Saleh in as a defensive coordinator. Everybody knows that's very reassuring, and that he's going to try to do whatever he can to generate intense pressure, physicality, and there's going to be growing pains. And the problem is they have to overcome the growing pains by making key plays, making key stops, not missing tackles like they did throughout in Houston, not blowing assignments, staying in their gaps, and following the orders.
You highlighted defensive back Lenoir finally getting an interception and stopping that drought of no interceptions for this 49ers defense. I want to hear your take on the 49ers secondary. What have you liked so far as the group continues to grow as we enter week 9 now?
I don't know if there's anything I love about it. I don't think I've always been very much part of the pass rush is tied to the coverage, and the pass rush hasn't been there yet this season. And so the coverage units aren't making plays on the ball. I get that they're having to shuffle safeties in and out, trying to get Mustafa up to speed. That's great, because I think he hits and has a presence back there. He missed too many tackles this past game. Diamador did make a play finally. This was great as his first interception since his contract extension, his first one in about a year. He made a really good play on the ball. It shows you he has that instinct on where the ball is going. I enjoyed talking to him about that. And then he was very honest after the game and saying that he had a lack of awareness about the time situation, that he was going to try to score because he saw that. And that's, you want to be a playmaker, you want to get points on the board for your team, when he probably should have set up a field goal attempt. And that's part of the learning curve, growing pains. And he's, it's a young secondary still, so they have to kind of figure some things out. And the best way to do that is if you have a pass rush where there's going to be, some balls up in the air where they can go get. And that's just part of it. It's part of the growing pains that they know they go through.
No, excellent point. That's for sure. Now, we can't talk about this Week 8 contest without talking about National Tight Ends Day. We've got 2 tight ends reaching the end zone there. Just how important was George Kittle's return for this offense, and also just tight end play as the offense is working through a lot of injuries?
They are working through injuries, and the receiving core is just not quite at full staff as this needs to be. So getting George back on the field the past 2 games, against Atlanta, it was heralded as a great effort for their run game with his blocking. And I think the Falcons front contributed to that. So the Niners knew how to attack it. Just having George on the field is just this presence of, all right, there's another big playmaker you have to be aware of besides Christian. And then Jake Tongas has come through, and he's got 4 touchdown catches this year, the first 4 of his career. And it's really cool to see that those 2 guys have come along. And then Luke Farrell's come through here and there. So they have to help take the pressure off the receiving core that hasn't delivered, that they're still waiting for Brandon Ayuk. Ricky Pearsall's battling back through a knee injury. Juwan Jennings isn't having his best season, but everybody knows what he's capable of. And, and at the same time, you're doing this with quarterback instability. And so it's when you have a veteran tight end like George Kittle on the field as an option that knows how to read defenses and is on the same page, that's great to see.
With New York next up, what's the biggest adjustment the 49ers need to make in order to have that bounce back game against the Giants in Week 9?
So, the Giants are 2-4, 2-5. They won their last 2 home games, and they've kept opponents under 20. The Niners have to score over 30 for the first time this season. They haven't scored over 30 this season. I think they can do so because the Eagles showed, they had 200-yard rushers last week against the Giants. So you need to get McCaffrey running the ball a lot. And it's not just on Christian. You need to have great blocking. So the offensive line needs to have a bounce-back game. They are going to face some very tough defensive ends. And when they do need to pass, they got to be aware of that. Maybe do some rollouts to kind of negate some of that pass rush. The Eagles had a nice blueprint on how to attack the Giants, and they had a lot of success. So the Niners are not the Eagles' offense, but the Niners can know how to scheme things up, and I think it's there for the taking. And then defensively, obviously, they just need to play more sound than they did before. And Jaxson Dart doesn't have his buddy Cam Skattebo in the backfield. The rookie running back, he dislocated his ankle, unfortunately, like Fred did. And so Skattebo is going to have, Jaxson Dart's going to have a lot of pressure on him to make more plays, and putting that pressure on a rookie quarterback, they can do so. Blitz him, do whatever you got to do to get him off his mark, and just make sure you have the right guys covered. So I think this is a game that the Niners can take. Obviously, you're going on another long road trip, another 10 a.m. start. They just have to come out ready to go from the get-go. They can't be sleepy. They got to be hyped up. You're going to be in New York. It's going to be a different atmosphere. They're going to be hungry. So I expect a different result.
All right, Cam, we're on to New York. Thank you so much for joining me today. Your take has been very awesome as the faithful sort of digest that hard game in Houston. I appreciate your time today.
All right, thanks for having me in the Saloon.
And now we're going to take it back to before kickoff in Houston. I sat down with 49ers long snapper Jon Weeks to talk about his time with the Texans and the impact he's making here in the Bay. What's up, faithful? This is your 49ers team reporter sitting down with Jon Weeks right before the 49ers versus Texans matchup in Week 8. Jon, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're getting ready to go back to Houston, a place where you spent 15 years playing, a city and an organization that shaped the player you are today. What's the feeling like knowing you'll be back in that building, but this time in the red and gold?
Yeah, it's a very strange feeling, but I'm very excited to go back to see all the familiar faces, to be able to say hi to everybody and just see how everybody's doing. I'm very excited. It should be fun. Should be a good game.
What's it like in the Bay Area? Tell me more about that transition. What made this place the right time and place to join the 49ers?
Yeah, the transition's been fantastic. The organization's been absolutely amazing. To be given the opportunity to come play for such a historic organization, a great coach, a great organization in itself was something that I couldn't pass up. And I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to come here and be a part of what they've established and what they continue to do here.
Yeah, and you're liking it. It looks like you're having
the weather's amazing. If I had to, the organization's unreal. It's fantastic. The team, the locker room, everything's great. But the weather, from someone who was raised in Phoenix and lived in Houston for the last 15 years, the weather's been absolutely unreal and awesome.
I know we should expect some crazy climate this weekend over in Houston.
I think it's gonna rain, which is kind of on par for what Houston is. So.
Houston's a closed stadium though, NRG.
It is a retractable roof. It will open, but the conditions have to be absolutely perfect. So if there's any chance of rain on Sunday, which I believe there is, they will have it closed.
Okay, interesting. We'll look forward to that. But I was just saying, it looks like you're having a lot of fun with Thomas Morstead and Eddie Pinheiro. It takes a group effort for Eddie to have his perfect field goal record here so far. What's it like working with those guys?
Oh, it's been awesome. Both those guys are true pros. The room is real relaxed. We all get along. It's just been a pleasure to watch both of them work, both masters of their craft. So be able to sit back and watch how they approach, the punting and kicking aspect from a mental aspect, physical aspect. It's been really cool to watch.
Now, I can't imagine that you've always wanted to be a long snapper. Tell me about your football journey and how it led you to snapping the ball and becoming one of the best to do it.
Yeah, well, thank you for that compliment. But, it was something that was presented to me when I was a freshman in high school. A coach came up to me and asked me if I wanted to play college football. I think as a young kid, that's all of our goals at the time, is to play college with a chance to make it to the pros. And, he told me if I was willing to put in the work, he would teach me a skill that would get me to college. My mom was a assistant principal. My father had just retired from the military, so I, as their son, wanted to do whatever I could to help financially, understanding that college could be expensive. And went and taught myself the skill. At the end of the year, I was the freshman long snapper. He told me that he came up to me and said, okay, you show me you're willing to put in the work, and now I'll teach you. And he taught me the skill and kind of took off from there. Now, did I ever imagine it would take me to the places it's taken me? No, not at all. But it's something I'm incredibly grateful for. My coach, Ben Bernard, back in Arizona, now coaches a lot of kids to be long snappers, so it's really cool to see.
That's awesome. You just fell in love with the game from there.
And, I've always been in love with football. I've played football as long as I can remember, so giving me another skill to continue playing my career was kind of a no-brainer for me. And, again, I never imagined it would take me to where it's taken me, but here I am, and I get to meet amazing people, and this is great.
That's really cool. Did you ever play any other positions?
Yeah, in high school I did. In high school I was our starting offensive tackle and defensive lineman.
Nice, both sides of the ball.
No, it was fun. High school was fun for me. It was one of those where if there was 120 plays in the game, I played 100 of them, so the ultimate just football love. Just loved doing high school football. It was so much fun.
Really cool, and it's taken you so far. You've built a reputation as one of the most consistent players at your position. At 39 years old, how do you maintain that level of precision just year after year?
I think for me, mostly it's just self-expectations. It's something I expect out of myself. It's also something that the job requires. I think our job is all about consistency and dependability. And I think one of the proudest things I can say is that being able to do what I've done for so long, I've been able to back up that part of the job that calls for that part of the job, right? So I think just expecting it out of myself and kind of never being satisfied. Always, how do we put it? A couple of the other guys say it. It's the strive for perfection, but just to accept the consistency of it kind of thing.
I like that. Accepting the consistency. That's good.
So,
yeah, awesome. Well, the 49ers will be up against a very familiar face. Their former defensive coordinator, DeMeco Ryans, head coach of the Texans now. You played under his leadership for a couple of seasons. Tell me about his impact on that team. Did he ever talk about his days with the 49ers?
Oh, he did all the time.
Yeah.
One of the funny stories I have about Cap. So I was fortunate enough to not only play for Coach DeMeco, but be his teammate for the first 2 years of my career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and when I walked into that building, and you're getting used to the building, the first thing guys would do is point to DeMeco and say, okay, that's the captain of the team. What he says goes, and that's Cap. So we all called him Cap. So transitioning from Cap to Coach Ryans was hard, right? But one of the first things he did, which we all gave him a hard time for, was he actually broke a Saturday night meeting. His rallying cry would be Texans, and he'd all say Swarm. Well, he gives us this really good speech, and then out of nowhere, he goes, Niners! And we just we laid into him. He gave such a good speech, and he had the room ready to roll, and then he just kind of slipped back into, I think, his old habits. But,
yeah, you can't fault him for that after so many years here.
There are not enough words to talk about what an amazing human being he is and how lucky that organization is to have him back and leading those men. And I don't have enough good things to say about DeMeco. He's just the most stand-up human being I've ever met in my life.
That's awesome. This is going to be a fun matchup on Sunday.
It is.
Really cool.
You can see a lot of similarities in both teams, so it'll be exciting.
Fun. John, you were also a leader for that team. I don't want that to go unnoticed. Longest tenured Texans player, Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee in 2023. Your character is just as strong and consistent as your game.
Well, thank you.
With that being said, we're approaching the My Cause, My Cleats season, and it's your first time here with the 49ers. Are you participating this year, and is there a specific cause you're looking at?
Yeah, we are participating, and we're excited with the organization that we paired up with. But something that my wife and myself have always been passionate about is just trying to help kids as much as possible. And we got really involved with an organization out in Houston called Child Advocates, which dealt with foster kids. And getting to meet all these young kids and hearing stories about the struggles that they've gone through and kind of what it's been like for them growing up through the system and stuff, it's just something we became super passionate about and something that we wanted to continue to help with. So we're super passionate about helping kids in general as much as we can. And we're excited with the group that we're working with.
Awesome. You've brought such a great energy over here to the Bay Area.
You.
Now, 49ers fans are known for packing out opponents' stadiums. There's likely going to be a lot of Niners fans in Houston this weekend. Any recommendations for them? Barbecue or best places to be at?
Oh, man. I mean, just ask and you shall receive. What do you guys want to know? The best barbecue in Houston, in my opinion, is done by my friend Ronnie Killen. He's got a couple amazing barbecue places called Killen's Barbecue. Good Company Barbecue is a solid spot. Our favorite Mexican restaurant in Houston was El Tiempo. That place is awesome. What else do you need? I mean, unfortunately, it's supposed to be kind of rainy, so you're going to get the full Houston effect. But Rice Village, kind of near the stadium where the University of Rice is an awesome little area. I mean, there's just a lot of great places in Houston, a lot of great food, a lot of great places to go and catch college football if you want to watch some football before, so it'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, the Niners fans are in for a treat this weekend. John, thank you so much for joining us today. Keep being amazing.
Thank you, myself. Thanks for having me.
Now, for an exclusive look at that Texans game, our studios team was there to capture all the action. Here are the sights and sounds from Week 8.
Oh, what? So bang on the game, baby. Bang on the game, baby. Let's go, Niners! What a ball by Jaxson. Great job. Come on. Hey. 1, 2, 3. Ball. Are you kidding me? Hey, straight. Great try, man.
Now it's time to look ahead to the Giants this Sunday. We've got some voices from New York joining us on the podcast. First up, I catch up with Kate Rooney, who spent some time covering the 49ers as a beat writer here in the Bay and is now covering all New York sports on the East Coast. Then I talked to Giants insider John Schmeelk to get some more insight on the matchup. Check it out here. All right, faithful, joining me on the Saloon now is Kate Rooney. She's the Pix 11 sports reporter over in New York, but you might recognize her because she covered the 49ers for a few seasons. Kate, thanks for joining us today.
So good to see you. So good to be back talking some 49ers football too.
You've covered both the 49ers and now the Giants this season. How do you compare the coaching, the culture, and just the outlook for each of these two teams?
Yeah, and they're two really different franchises. It's been so interesting for me because the 49ers was the first professional football team that I covered, and they set the bar really high in terms of establishing an incredible culture, both under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, but also under the ownership. And then when I came to New York, the Giants were very much still trying to figure things out under head coach Brian Daboll and GM Joe Schoen. Now, they've been there for a few years already, so you're starting to get a sense of what they're all about, but they've had some issues with personnel. They haven't quite been able to build the roster that they wanted. They started off with a quarterback they inherited in Daniel Jones. So it's really always been about making do with what they had. And now this is sort of the first time that they were able to work with their own roster. And that includes Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, bringing those guys in. They really wanted to make that switch at quarterback. But of course, their draft class, Jaxson Dart, Skattebo, these guys have really helped shift the culture there. Last year, I think the Giants players, the veterans who've been around for quite some time, were starting to feel a little dejected, not really sure about the direction of where this team could go. And this was a little bit of a prove-it year for Daboll and Schoen. Their draft this year was absolutely huge for them. And so far, it seems to be working out because the spark that has been provided by Dart, by Skattebo, and a lot of people are still encouraged by the play of Abdul Carter, who was their number 3 overall pick. I think that, things are starting to shift there, and they're working towards building a culture that they hope will be comparable to the 49ers, because as I see it, the 49ers are really the gold standard.
Yeah, Kate, from your time in the Bay, how do you see head coach Kyle Shanahan responding after a tough loss against the Houston Texans?
Well, that's one thing about Shanahan. He has never shied away from responding after a loss. There have been so many times where over the course of the Shanahan era, the 49ers didn't get off to the greatest starts. In fact, that's kind of been a knock on Shanahan during his career in San Francisco, is that sometimes they'll start the season with these really high expectations and end up losing 3 of their first 5 games and then going on to make the NFC Championship, right? So he has really, as a coach, taught his players to believe that they are never out of it, that they can always bounce back. And I think they've shown that this season as well, because they came back and won after losing to Jacksonville. They came back and won after losing to Tampa Bay and losing Fred Warner. No reason they think that they can't come back and win this week as well, even though last week's loss was really discouraging. And you look at how banged up the team is even more after that. Certainly a lot of things that they have to overcome. But if there's any team that has the faith and the structure in place to overcome that, I do believe it's the 49ers.
All right, now, Kate, take us to New York. How do you see this locker room responding to a 2-6 start? How are the Giants getting it going, especially with a lot of young players on the roster?
Yeah, well, I think it's been a really great locker room. I've been really impressed. During training camp, it's always hard to gauge because every team is 0-0, right? Every team feels encouraged and positive, and they work so hard, and they think that this is the year they're going to improve and break through. For the Giants, I think that even though their record might not have them atop the power rankings, they feel that they have been competitive in every single game, that they at least had a chance to win in every single game. Now, of course, closing out some of those games has proved to be a really big issue for them, and they are not without a great deal of flaws. But the locker room throughout it all has been much more positive, much more energetic, and just overall much more fun. So it's going to be interesting to see how this week is when we get into the locker room, because I think losing Skattebo is a really big blow to this team. That being said, they believe in themselves and they know that they are working on building something. And so I expect them to have that attitude going forward. They have a tough schedule, and they always knew that there were going to be a lot of challenges on this schedule. But if they can knock out a few more wins, if they can maybe even finish the season 500 or with a winning record, it's not impossible. It's going to be tough, but it's not impossible. They believe they can do it. And I think it's going to be one of the more interesting storylines for the rest of the season is how they handle that.
Now, you've covered young quarterbacks before. What stands out about Jaxson Dart so far?
I was pretty impressed with Jaxson Dart from the first day he walked into Giants training camp this summer. He has a poise well beyond his years. And, there's a fine line between being cocky and having swagger. And he is right on that fine line in the best possible way. He is unbelievably confident in his own skill set and his ability to produce and make plays, but without being overly cocky about it. And so far, he's backed it up. So he has the right attitude. He says all the right things, and he has the right demeanor. As far as what he actually does on the field, it's still a lot of work, right? Still a lot that he has to learn about what it takes to play in the league. I mean, he played at Ole Miss, which is a very quarterback-friendly system under Lane Kiffin, and the NFL, whole different opera completely. But for Jaxson Dart, he's been incredibly impressive in terms of his decision-making. We saw right away what an upgrade that was over what we saw from Daniel Jones last year, although of course he's doing well in Indy now, and even Russell Wilson in those first 3 games of the season. When Jaxson Dart came in, I believe he's the first rookie quarterback with 8 passing touchdowns and 4 rushing touchdowns through his first 5 games. Only 1 start has he not had a rushing touchdown. I think that just shows his versatility, his toughness. He's not afraid to play physical, and he is not afraid to take his time, let a play develop, go through his read progressions, and make the best decision possible. And we've seen that. So now we just got to see, can he be more efficient all the time? Can he be clutch? Because we haven't been able to see these Giants necessarily close out all the games they wanted to close out. And can he just continue to improve making those good decisions?
On that note, Kate, let's take a closer look at this 49ers-Giants matchup. What do you think are going to be some of the biggest challenges for the Giants against San Francisco this Sunday?
Well, the number one biggest challenge is going to be containing Christian McCaffrey, because the Giants' run defense has been, let's just put it mildly, porous this season. They are the 3rd worst run defense in the league. They're allowing 148.9 running yards per game, and here they are playing arguably the best running back in the league. Christian McCaffrey, of course, also a huge threat in the pass game, too. This is probably my favorite stat of the season, Bree. Christian McCaffrey is number 2 in receptions in the NFL this season behind Jamar Chase, as if you didn't already know what a dual threat this guy is. But yeah, the Giants' run defense has just not been up to par this season. And as far as the best way for Shanahan to respond, it's obviously get the ball in Christian McCaffrey's hands as much as humanly possible. I fully expect that to be the basis of their game plan, especially with the way the Giants' run defense has performed. That's what it's really going to come down to. And if the Giants can figure out a way to stop him, it's going to be a lot tougher for the 49ers to score. If they can't, then I'm not sure they have much of a chance.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. 49ers fans, Christian McCaffrey is leading in rushing yards and receiving yards. As if you didn't know, he was a dual threat. Now, when it comes to the 49ers game planning against New York, from the Giants' perspective, what or who could be an X factor in this matchup that Niners fans got to keep an eye on?
Yeah, well, I think this week it's going to be Tyrone Tracy. And it's interesting because the Giants have had their share of injuries as well. No one is as banged up as the 49ers, but they've had to already rely on a lot of backups throughout the season. Their offense has been depleted from the beginning with injuries to Malik Neighbors, to Darius Slayton in the receiving core. Tyrone Tracy, second-year player, showed a lot of promise last season. And before Skattebo really started to break out, I think a lot of people thought Tracy was going to carry the heavy run load on this team. So now is a chance for him to show that, to get back in there, show that he can be a number 1 type back, handle that workload. And if he is able to contend with the number of yards that Christian McCaffrey is able to put up, maybe the Giants can hang around more. Maybe they have a better chance of making some offensive moves in this game that a lot of people are kind of counting them out for after all those injuries to their offense.
Definitely. Now, Kate, we're coming up on week 9. What will define success for both of these teams as we head towards the second half of the season?
I'll start with the 49ers. The unfortunate thing about being one of the all-time greatest franchises, right, is that anything other than a Super Bowl win is not acceptable. It's a nice problem to have. But when you look at just the way this roster has been utterly depleted for the 49ers, it is realistically, it's really hard to imagine them winning the Super Bowl. It would be one of the greater stories in NFL history about overcoming the odds, I think. That being said, we already talked about the culture under Kyle Shanahan, the winning culture, the physical brand of play that the 49ers have, their craftiness on offense. And last week notwithstanding, I have actually been really impressed by what Robert Saleh has done with this young defensive unit and how creative he's been in trying to replace Bosa and Warner, and what he's been asking of these younger guys on that side of the ball. And I think they've done a really good job. They've overperformed considering. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that the 49ers could make the playoffs and surprise some people. They have, they're still in a really good position in the NFC West, right? So if they can keep that up and keep winning divisional games, that'll really help them. Trade deadline, going to be crucial. Obviously, they're not going to be willing to part with any of their major important pieces, but how can they get creative and pick up some guys who can help this roster go the distance? And for the Giants, I actually think it's kind of similar. It would take a little bit of a miracle for them to be a playoff team, but they want to proceed as though they have a winning culture. They want to get the pieces in place around Jaxson Dart and really invest in this team. So I expect them to be very active at the trade deadline too. I think their best case scenario would be like a 500 finish, right? And that would be a vast improvement over last season. And if they were to be able to know that they are getting Cam Skattebo, Malik Neighbors back next year and have their young defensive players take a step forward, that would be a huge step in the right direction. All the Giants fans are asking for is a little bit of hope. I think they've already gotten that. And if they can finish out the season strong, it'll basically be a win for them this season.
All right, Kate, thank you so much. You got the awesome coverage from coast to coast. We really appreciate you joining us on the Saloon today.
Been a lot of fun. Thanks, Bree.
All right, Faithful, joining me from the New York Giants is Jon Schmeelk. Jon, thanks for joining us on the Saloon today.
Thanks for having me.
We are talking to the Faithful here. Jon, what do 49ers fans need to know about this Giants team heading into Week 9 now?
Well, I love spending time in a good saloon, first of all, so I'm very happy to be with you. I think right now the Giants are unfortunately trying to chase the 49ers in terms of the number of players that are injured and aren't being able to take the field, which is obviously not great. Cam Skattebo out for the year. At least we think he's out for the year with that really gruesome ankle injury last week. If you haven't seen it, don't go and find it. It is not a fun thing to look at. In the secondary on defense, Paulson Adebo and Paulson Adebo, their starting corner, really their number one corner, and Javon Holland, both the free agent additions last offseason. Holland's one of their safeties. They both missed last week's game. Then they lose Cordell Flott to a concussion during the game and another backup cornerback, Art Green. So they towards the end of the game, they were starting Corey Black, who was a 7th-round pick last year, got cut at the end of training camp, got signed to the Jets practice squad, and the Giants had just brought back earlier last week. So they're really banged up in the secondary. They lost their starting running back, Cam Skattebo. Malik Neighbors obviously lost of the year earlier in the year with that knee injury. So they're trying to figure things out. But I think they're probably a little bit better than their record would indicate. They had a lead against both Dallas and Denver this year and lost both those games late. So they're talented, they're young, they're feisty. They have an exciting young quarterback, but they are dealing with some injuries on other sides of the ball.
Yeah, if any team knows about working through injuries, it's definitely the 49ers, so we feel you on that front. The loss of Cam Skattebo is obviously the news of the weekend. How does the Giants' offense go from here? Who needs to step up?
Yeah, it's going to be Tyrone Tracy, and he was a draft pick from the Giants in the 2024 NFL draft. And before they drafted Cam Skattebo, he was slated in to be their starting back this year. He had 1,000 yards from scrimmage as a rookie. He's a converted wide receiver from his college days. Played running back his final year in college at Purdue after being a wide receiver at Iowa. Came in, did a really nice job last year for the Giants as running back. So I think you get a lot of Tyrone Tracy. You'll get some Devin Singletary as well. Tracy, again, a converted wide receiver, also good in the passing game. So it'll have a different feel for the running game. Cam Skattebo more of a downhill power back. Tracy more of a slasher. But I think he'll be an effective runner, even though he's a different type of runner than Skattebo.
Yeah, I want to hear about quarterback Jaxson Dart. He's got a few more reps in now as we enter Week 9. How have you seen his confidence and command grow week after week?
Oh, there's been never issue with his confidence. This guy's got swagger. He's got moxie. He believes in himself. He's got that in spades. And the best way I could describe Jaxson Dart is that he's a playmaker. He'll figure out a way to find extra time in the pocket. He has a great pocket presence and spidey sense where he can kind of sense where the rushers are, move around, buy extra time. He likes to step up in the pocket. He'll throw on the move, and he's been great on third down. So when you get into these third and medium, third and longs, he's been able to buy some time with his legs. He has good vision to see guys down the field once the play breaks down. Now he has work to do in terms of getting from one read to the next, keeping his eyes up if the pressure gets to him a little bit, finding guys when he's in the pocket. But the playmaking skills are there as he tries to figure out what he's doing in terms of figuring out the mental part and kind of the art of playing quarterback in the National Football League. But he's certainly given the Giants team and the organization and the fan base a huge burst of energy where there's a lot of now optimism for the future that the Giants might have their quarterback moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Well, looking at that Giants-Eagles game, the Giants did give up 5 sacks. What's the key to protecting Dart against the 49ers front this week?
So they have one of the best pass rushes in football. And then you had the Eagles last week who managed 5 sacks as well. So that was a lot to do with Jaxson Dart holding the football. You know, I talked about Jaxson Dart's playmaking ability. Some of that is him holding the ball a little bit. He held the ball. His average time to throw last week was 3.6 seconds, which is extremely high. He only threw 8 passes in the game where he got the ball out in under 2.5 seconds. So if the Niners can stay with their pass rush and bring Dart down, which has kind of been the challenge this year, where he's been, again, very elusive in the pocket, he will hold the football a little bit. The Giants' offensive line has been better this year. It's been an Achilles heel for this organization over the past, 10 seasons. But this year it's been better. Andrew Thomas came back in week 3, played around 20 snaps. Since then, he's been a full-time left tackle. He's played like a Pro Bowler. And since then, the offensive line has played better, both in run blocking and pass protection. But again, Dart will hold the ball, and that should give some opportunities to the Niners pass rush. I know they're blitzing a little bit more. Dart's been pretty good against the blitz. We'll see how they handle that this week.
All right. Well, looking at the defensive side of the ball, some injuries allowed some younger players to fit into the secondary there. How do you see those players adjusting to those roles, and what is your take on the Giants secondary?
Yeah, I think if you look at their defense, that's the level of the defense that's been a problem this year. There's been too many free runners, too many guys running open, not blown assignments necessarily, but the guys in the secondary not finishing plays. You know, I kind of talked in my first answer about the injuries back there. I don't know if Paulson Adebo is going to be back this week. I don't know if Cordell Flott's going to be back this week. I don't know if Javon Holland is going to be back this week. So those are 3 huge injuries. If Holland can't go, it'll be Dane Belton and Tyler Nubin again at safety. And then at corner, honestly, it's going to be Deonte Banks at one corner. The other one, we'll have to see. It could be Corey Black. I'm sure the Giants are going to bring in a lot of guys for tryouts this week, see who else they can bring in to try to help at that cornerback spot. Because right now, that is a source of weakness in the secondary. And if there's one spot to attack right now, it would be the Giant cornerback spot, given all their injuries there.
John, your New York Giants faced Saquon Barkley in Week 8 and are now facing Christian McCaffrey in Week 9. What adjustments does the defense need to make for this game plan against San Francisco?
Yeah, look, and you look at the Giants' overall rush defense numbers, they're not good. Last week, the Eagles had gone 5 straight games for rushing fewer than 90 yards. It was their longest streak since 2005. And they went for 274 yards last week against the Giants' rush defense. The Eagles put on their big boy pants. They played multiple tight ends, 6 offensive linemen, and frankly ran the ball down the Giants' throats. And they got bullied a little bit. The Giants' linebackers got blocked in the game. Eagles' offensive line were able to get to the second level. And I think they just have to do a better job of playing physical up front for one. And then at the linebacker spot, get to your gaps. Don't let these linemen get to the second level on these linebackers and create those big spaces. Because, look, Christian McCaffrey, when he's healthy this year, he's probably the best running back in the National Football League. Second in the NFL in receptions, not to mention his ability to run it. So that's the guy, I'm sure, in the Giants game plan meetings this week that's going to be circled with the big red Sharpie. And they're going to say, we have to have eyes on this guy at all time. But the Giants have to be more physical, and they need to be more Simon sound to prevent the type of deluge that they had last week against the Eagles in the run game.
Yeah, definitely a lot of areas of the game to look at as we get closer to Sunday's game. John, what will be the deciding factor for the Giants to pull off a win at home against the Niners?
I think it's figuring out how to slow down Kyle Shanahan's scheme, right? And we know what a offensive genius he is. And even though they keep having mounted injuries on offense, whether it's Brock Purdy at quarterback, no Brandon Ayuk, no rookie Pearsall, Juwan Jennings missed a lot of time. You're bringing Kendrick Bourne off the scrap heap. He's going for 100 yards. Kyle Shanahan knows how to put together an offensive game plan. He's one of the 2 or 3 best offensive coaches in the National Football League. So I'm sorry, he looked at that Eagles tape last week where the Giants struggled. He looked at the fourth quarter against the Broncos where the Giants gave up 33 points in one quarter against the Denver Broncos. And he's going to find some things that he can try to exploit. So you're going to have to close those holes, close those gaps, be assignment sound, and to your point, try to contain Christian McCaffrey and play good defense, keep yourselves in the game, hope against a banged-up Niners defense, no Fred Warner, no Nick Bosa. Jaxson Dart can make enough plays to keep you in this game and try to walk away with a victory.
A lot to look at as we head towards Sunday. John, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in New York very soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Briana.
All right, that'll do it for this episode, Faithful. Thank you so much for joining us on The Saloon presented by Cisco. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, SiriusXM, and your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next time, and go Niners.